look at third world countries where people are living in these cities that are basically assemblies of all of these different little shanties, none of which match up with the others architecturally, but it's because the people can barely survive. They don't have a lot of money, so they're just throwing together whatever they can in order to fit inside of it and have shelter, and they don't really care if it's ugly or if it's beautiful. I'm not knocking these people. These are their circumstances. However, in modern America, when we do have resources, when we do have the ability to build beautiful things, the idea that we just settle for a box every single time anything is constructed is unforgivable. We should be making a beautiful public square, and instead we just try to figure out what is the bare minimum that we can do in the construction of this building.
That's right. I mean, first of all, there's a kind of utilitarian spirit that guides it. But even if that weren't there, most of modernism is incredibly brutalizing. And what's a shame, I spent most of my life in love with Aristotle. I love reading his work. And of course, one of the great principles of classical philosophy is that form follows function, that what something is rooted in or is based upon what it's for. And the modernists took that idea of form followed function and produced all of these heinous glass boxes.
That's right.
And it's because they didn't count the function. They said, well, it's to bear weight. Well, a box can bear weight, but the function of a building is to contain people, and it has to have humane contours and contours that reflect the human form and the human intellect, which is specifically what our contemporary architecture doesn't do. It for some reason, I'm thinking of the Ronald Reagan building, which is a building he tried to get killed all during the 8 years that he was in power. It's one of the ugliest buildings in Washington, D.C. It's just a rectangular box. But yeah, this really should be, for every person who's not nuts, this really should be a priority. And I think the inability of people to think meaningfully about culture in our day is striking, even though I think people are better at it now than they were 20 years ago. The first conservative thinker, the first right-wing thinker is Edmund Burke. It's in his lifetime that the idea of the right comes into being. And one of Burke's great phrases, which he borrows from Cicero, but is right after he writes this beautiful speech at his reflection of the French Revolution on the glory of Marie Antoinette. And he continues to reflect on the nature of beauty. And he says, to make our country lovable, it ought to be lovely. And that should be the first principle of politics, is creating forms that are worth loving and preserving. And of course, what we have is an anti-culture and anti-politics on the left that is trying to willfully remake our political community, our country, into a monstrous form, first by painting it as a monstrous form, and then saying, so this is something that just needs to be killed. The founding principle of conservatism is, and the right in general, is that something that's worth loving ought to be cultivated and cared for as a thing meant to become lovely.
No, I think you're absolutely right. To most people, this doesn't even, as you said, it doesn't even occur to them to think like, all right, well, the buildings that I'm in actually have to be held to some kind of standard of aesthetic beauty. We know that if it's falling apart or completely hideous or looks as if it's not constructed safely or has any indication that there wasn't thought put into it, on that level, that we dislike it or aren't interested in it. But again, just having a glass box or a brick box with some glass in it seems to be enough for us. And it's interesting, we just stare at these rectangles all day, whether it's our phone in our pocket or our computer screen or our television screen. And, it almost seems as if the idea is that the era you live in can be very ugly, because your experience of beauty is just going to come from the image that we place on this rectangle, basically, whether it's your phone or your television or your computer screen. All of your entertainment or all of your experience of beauty is going to have to be filtered through that thing. And then, of course, what's ended up happening is these Hollywood directors are just filling it with hideousness. They don't put anything beautiful there at all anymore. Almost everything that's produced is ugliness for the sake of ugliness and getting you to accept ugliness.